Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about our Alcohol Culture Change Partnership grants. I'm Louisa Shepherd, and I'll be talking you through the grant information today. First off, thank you so much for registering to learn more about our grants, funding opportunity which is available as part of VicHealth's partnership grants. Today, I'm firstly going to give you a brief overview of VicHealth's approach to alcohol culture change. I'll then talk in more detail about the Alcohol Culture Change Partnership Grant, which will include what this grant is aiming to achieve, what we need to know to complete your application, and how this grant will lead to future funding opportunities. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar. There is a chat function and a question function, and my colleagues here are with me to answer questions that you have as they come in. So we can answer questions as you go. You don't need to wait till the end, but we will answer some questions at the end as well. When we answer questions, we may allow for everyone to see the response, which means that if someone has the same question as you may find the answer is already on the screen. And if we have any technical issues and it's too hard to progress, we will stop the webinar and I'll send you a copy of the slide deck and all the information by email, but hopefully we won't encounter any issues today. And you will find also in the handout section, you'll be able to download a copy of the grant information sheet, the Alcohol Cultures Framework, and also the General Partnership Grants Guidelines. And we'll send this out to you after the webinar as well. Okay, let's get started. So firstly, I would like to explain what we mean by alcohol culture. So the notion of drinking culture or alcohol culture is commonly referred to across public health, the media, politicians, and even the alcohol industry, and often pointing to our problematic alcohol culture and the need for it to change. Well, we found a review of the literature offers very little in terms of defining what alcohol culture is as a concept. So in recent years, VicHealth has been working with our partners in the alcohol sector to develop a shared understanding of alcohol culture that could guide efforts to build evidence-based strategies for alcohol harm reduction through influencing culture. So what is alcohol culture? It's not just about the individual drinker in isolation making rational and conscious decisions about their drinking. It's about the many factors that influence the way that we consume alcohol products. We define alcohol culture as the way a group of people drink, including their shared understanding of formal rules, social norms, practices, values, and beliefs around what is and is not socially acceptable when they get together. With this approach, we've shifted the focus from the behaviours of individual to the shared activities and practices of a group, which we call a social world. A social world is a group of people that get together for a common interest or activity. They share norms and practices, including expectations about how they behave when they're together. So examples of social worlds may be occupation groups, such as hospitality workers, nurses, lawyers, music group fans, or musicians themselves, sporting groups or fans of sport, groups with shared situations or interests, such as parents groups or students at university, technology-based groups, such as gamers, or groups with an appreciation of a similar interest. So there's a range of social worlds, I guess, within our culture and also within those broader concepts that I mentioned as well. So where there is a drinking culture, the norms, practices and expectations are shared within a social world, and in some social worlds there is risky drinking cultures where harm from alcohol is common. Changing risky drinking cultures isn't about telling people that they can't have a drink or taking someone away from a social world. It's about influencing the activities and practices that are acceptable in a social world to minimise harm from alcohol products. So VicHealth developed the Alcohol Cultures Framework, which provides a guide for those in an interest in changing risky drinking cultures to reduce harm from alcohol products. And I'd like to acknowledge the advice and support we received in developing the framework from the Alcohol and Drug Foundation and La Trobe University's Centre for Alcohol Policy Research and the Australian Institute for Primary Care and Ageing. So this is what the cultures framework looks like. And the framework acknowledges that many factors influence the way we consume alcohol products, including the way it is priced, promoted, and its availability. Individual factors such as resilience, ethnicity, and beliefs, and also the influence of people and context around us. Alcohol culture change is not seeking to draw members away from the social world, but rather to influence and help transform drinking norms, expectations, and practices within the group. To do this, intervention action can focus on understanding three separate but overlapping elements. So these are the settings in which the group drinks, for example, availability of alcohol, enforcement of rules or venue promotions, the social know-how or skills this group shares in drinking together, such as the glasses that are used, different types of alcohol, doing shots or using your lemon, and the shared meanings of drinking among the group, such as sharing rituals, myths, or traditions around drinking alcohol. So the Alcohol Cultures Framework, it should be used to guide grant recipients in their project design, delivery, and evaluation for these grants. Within the framework, there is also a list of critical questions to consider across the frames for intervention, such as how central is alcohol in a particular setting or event? What purpose does it serve? Is intoxication socially acceptable? In what circumstances is it not acceptable? And what then happens? So these questions will be really helpful to use if you are successful in getting an alcohol culture change partnership grant to gain insights from the social world you have identified within this grant. And just quickly, I just wanted to highlight that we have funded 9 projects across Victoria to test the application of this framework. And they worked with a range of social worlds, including university students, blue-collar workers, LBQ women in rural and regional Victoria, young people in Horsham, youth in the nighttime economy in inner city Melbourne, and disengaged youth in urban fringes. So if you want to find out more about these projects, there's some information on our website. Most of them are coming to an end, and there'll be evaluation findings released in mid-2020. Okay, so now that you have some background on our approach to alcohol culture change, I'll now explain how this approach should be used with the partnership grants we currently have available. So what's on offer? So the funding for this initiative will be offered in 2 stages. So the current offer is a grant of $25,000, and that is for organisations and a research partner to identify a risky drinking social world, gain insights about the social world, including how the settings, skills, and shared meanings of the target group influence the way people drink, and then develop a project idea to change the risky drinking culture within that world. So that, as I said, that's what we currently have on offer. We will be funding up to 10 grants, and they are to be delivered between May and August next year. Then stage 1 recipients, they will then be eligible to submit a proposal for funding at stage 2. So stage 2 is really to deliver the idea of the intervention that they have developed through the insights. So we'll be funding up to 7 projects at stage 2, and they can receive up to $250,000 to deliver that project over a 2-year period. And you'll see, so that is from January 2021 to December 2022. One important thing to note is for stage 1, a research partner is mandatory. So that could include an academic or a consultant with public health expertise, and they are to guide the project design and delivery. So their in-principle support will need to be demonstrated in your application. And if you're interested, you can contact VicHealth for a list of researchers who may be interested in partnering with you on this project. So you can then contact them directly. Oh. So the grant outcomes that we're aiming to achieve. So this first stage is really aimed to achieve the short-term goal, which is to increase understanding of the factors in the social and physical environment that influence high-risk drinking within an identified social world. The medium-term goal will then hopefully be achieved through stage 2 funding, which is to implement changes to the social and physical environment to make low-risk drinking more acceptable and encouraged within an identified social world. And in the long term, it is hoped that this work will change high-risk drinking cultures in Victoria to reduce harm from alcohol products. So who can apply? There are no limitations to who can apply for this grant. So this list that we have here is just a suggestion. As I mentioned, the only limitation or the only requirement is that a research partner needs to be part of your application. And organisations, they may want to work together to form a partnership application, which is fine. Just one organisation must take the lead to be the administrator for the funding on behalf of all the partners. And so that just needs to be demonstrated in the application form that we have. And so how do you apply? So there's a link on our website with the application form. And for this grant, there's 3 questions that you need to answer. The first one is to just provide a brief description of your project idea, and that is to be a plain language summary of your proposal in 100 words. The second is to identify which social world you wish to gain insights from and why. So if you do have any data available to demonstrate the need to target this social world, that would be beneficial. Otherwise, you can use any evidence that you have to demonstrate why there is a need to target them, and also how your idea would address issues of disadvantage or vulnerable sectors in the community. So that's to be answered within 400 words. And then the third one is to describe what will you do to gain insights into the social world, who you will work with, and how you use these insights to inform an intervention. So as I mentioned, it's important to refer to the alcohol cultures framework within this answer, and in particular look at the critical components checklist, which outlines some key questions that you can ask the social worlds to gain those insights. And then also outline within this how you engage with the social world and also the research partner and or any other partners that you have as part of the project. And you have 800 words to answer that question. So that obviously provides quite a chunk of the application. So then in addition to that, there are some supporting documents that you also need to attach. So there is a work plan template. So that's where you would fill out your key activities and who is involved in those activities and a timeline. There is also a budget template. So both of these templates are available on our website, where you would outline or the key expenditure for the grant. As I mentioned before, you do need to provide evidence of a research partner. So that can just be written evidence confirming a research partner has provided in principle support to be involved in this project. A conflict of interest declaration and management form. So this is only required if an organisation, individual or partner associated with the application has past or present arrangement with alcohol, junk food or sugar sweetened beverage industries. So we will need to know about that. And then there's the VicHealth's Partnership Grant Contract Departure Proposal form, which is also that's only required if your organisation is unable to comply with any of the clauses in our standard terms and conditions. And I just wanted to make a note here as well about human research ethics approval. So it's not a requirement of VicHealth to obtain ethics approval for this research, but it may be a requirement of the research partner that you're working with to do this. So if you do choose to obtain ethics approval, this process will need to be outlined in the work plan and how it will be achieved within the short time frame of the project. So, for example, if you have a committee date that you plan to submit it in, can you put that detail in the work plan so that we can see that that's not going to have any delays on the project. So the assessment criteria, so alignment of the grant outcome, which is what I previously mentioned, what the outcomes were. The budget, viability, and that's really about the application being well planned and achievable within the time frame, making sure that there are resources required to deliver the project, and appropriate partners, and demonstrating an ability to work with them collaboratively, and that it's financially viable as well. Community need is seeing if the proposed project addresses a clearly identified and demonstrated local need. And access and equity, which does the application address issues of disadvantage, social exclusion, barriers to participation, or vulnerable sectors of the community. So applicants will be notified of the assessment outcome by the 30th of April 2020. And also have a look at the guidelines. There's a section in there about what we will and won't fund. So if you are successful in receiving this grant, this is a project schedule which outlines the reporting requirements, including the progress reports. So I guess it's really important that you're aware of these requirements and when the deadlines are, so that you know before applying for the grant that you will be able to achieve them. As this is a relatively small grant, there's not too many requirements to meet. It's mainly having face-to-face meetings to kick off, and then we will have a community of practice meeting somewhere in the middle to end of June, and that's where it'll be a half-day compulsory meeting at VicHealth, and that's where we'll bring together all of the grant recipients and also perhaps some other guest speakers. And then it's really just the report at the end, which is detailing all the insights gained from your findings, and then the proposal for Stage 2 funding. So it is not mandatory for you to apply for Stage 2 funding. You may find that you have gone and done some research with a particular social world and found that there wasn't the issues that you thought there may be, or the social world may not be as engaged as you would want them to be. So yes, there is no pressure to apply for Stage 2 funding, but if you do would like to go ahead, then the proposals will be due mid-September. And more information about that process will come out throughout the time that you're delivering the grant. So the grant stage, as I mentioned, stage 2 funding is only available to those that receive stage 1 grants. So when you've received the grant and you're delivering it, we'll be providing you with further information about what would be required for stage 2 funding if you are interested in applying. So so here are the key dates. So the application's closed at 12 p.m. on the 24th of February. So I know that seems like a long time, but given that I imagine a lot of people will be going off for a bit of a Christmas break, we wanted to make sure that everyone would have enough time to get applications together. So within that time, we'll all be available for questions if you have any further questions. But I guess it also gives you time to speak with some other organisations if you want to partner with them, and also researchers that may be interested, and really hopefully come up with a great application. And so if you visit our website for more information, and we've also got the Partnership Grants email if you have any further inquiries after today. So now on to final questions that I can talk through. So I know that my colleagues have been typing away at a couple of questions. So let's see if we have any that I can answer. Someone has has asked if I could explain what in-principle support means in a little more detail. So basically, it is a letter or in writing from the researcher to say that they support this project and they are happy to be involved in the project. So we will need the researcher to sign that off and obviously their details as well. But yes, that is all that is required, and then you attach that letter to the application form on the website. So someone's asked, is there any additional criteria that we need to be aware of? So there's nothing else really, but I think just making clear that you have applied the alcohol cultures framework, so making reference to it in your application. And I guess what we're really looking for is the identification of that social world as well. So the more information that you have about that social world that you would like to do research on, the clearer it will be for us. Okay, so we've got a question here about if there is no data available to attribute to the social world, what other information they could put in the application. So we understand that particularly if there are specific social worlds out there, there's not always data available. So if there is other information such as observations or anecdotes, they would have to be from reputable sources. Then that can also be used within your application. We basically need you to demonstrate why you have chosen this social world. So how you know that they have a risky drinking culture. So how you have found that out, if that is from that information and or any other data that you have available, then include that in the application. Okay, so we've got a question here that the website indicates you won't be funding programs that look at changing the behaviour of individuals, but what if community education forms part of the proposed intervention? So we acknowledge that some traditional approaches such as education or social marketing can be used, but it's important that these techniques are used to um, focus on the norms and practices of the social world that you're targeting. So we're not looking for those sorts of programs to target individual behaviours. So really that's where the insights are really important, because that's what we want to change, those common shared meanings, the skills, the settings. So you can use education and social marketing to change some of those areas that you've highlighted, and within that, then that will change individuals. But we just don't want the individual focused education um, approaches. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone, for your questions. Looks like we'll wrap it up here. So thanks again for tuning in for today's webinar. Please reach out to us if you have any other questions on the email that I mentioned. And we'll also be getting in touch with you in the coming days with a follow-up email, including a link to this webinar in case you want to share it with your colleagues. So thank you.